Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which looks at any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Hosted today by Janita Cathy. Here's Janita.
Welcome to It's a Woman's World. My name is Janita Cathy, and joining me today are my co-hosts, Nava Johnson.
Hi.
Hello. Uma Jenga.
Hi, Janita.
Hello. Dr. Susan Strauss.
Hey, Janita.
Nadia Jordana.
Nice to be here.
Nice to see you as well. And then we have our special guest, Dr. Artika Tyner. Dr. Tyner is a director of diversity as well as clinical law professor at the University of St. Thomas. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So today you've joined us to talk a little bit about President Obama's initiative on My Brother's Keeper. Can you tell us a little bit about this initiative?
Yes, it was launched earlier this spring as a focus on the opportunity gap of really saying how can we bridge some of the access and barriers that African American males and young men of color experience at a disproportionate rate. Some of those disparities are everything from looking at high school graduation levels, being referred out of the classroom for school disciplinary issues, and of course some of the challenges that we see related to mass incarceration. So President Obama took a courageous stand to say, we have to make a difference. This is a social crisis, this is an economic crisis, but more importantly, this is an American crisis that impacts us all. So with that, he was able to partner with a number of corporate leaders, faith-based organizations, and other members of the philanthropic community to really get together and think about how they can make a strategic difference.
Wow. So this is a national initiative. Tell us a little about some of the local efforts that are happening in our state to support this initiative.
Some of the local initiatives that come to mind, and there are plenty of unsung heroes, so please excuse me if I miss some of the other local initiatives, but two that come to mind for me quite immediately. One is Save Our Sons, which was founded by Sergeant Melvin Carter, Jr. And for me, I was just at their celebration this past Friday. And their focus has really been on meeting the needs of young men who are incarcerated in Ramsey County Juvenile Detention Center. For him, it's really been a calling and define his purpose to think about how can he help young men go from this cradle to the prison pipeline to new pathways into the community related to success. So he actually goes into the local correctional facilities to mentor and coach the young men from everything from life skills to managing conflict. But more importantly, what I saw as I listened to the testimonial of the young men that he'd been working with, he served as a role as a father, a mentor, and a friend. So for me, as I was celebrating another year of their success, was really focusing on how I could be more of a part of a community network to support the young men who are coming out of the juvenile correction facilities as well. The second initiative, which was created through the University of St. Thomas in partnership with the NAACP, Aurora St. Anthony Neighborhood Development Corporation, and a number of other partners, is called Brotherhood, Inc. And Brotherhood, Inc. is a local nonprofit that focuses on empowering young men of color who have been at risk of entering the correctional facilities or the path to mass incarceration or at risk just generally. So Brotherhood, Inc. provides opportunities to provide them with life skills coaching, but more importantly, a job. It's modeled after Homeboy Industries in LA, and that was started by a Jesuit priest, Father Gregory Boyle. And his model was simple: nothing can stop a bullet like a job. So what Brotherhood provides is on-site employment opportunities. So I have to do a shameless plug. If you're a coffee drinker, their first social enterprise is Brotherhood Brew. So the young men sell a wide range of coffee products as well. So I give those as two examples because those are the ones that I've been involved or supported over the years. And I've seen the impact of the work of going from someone feeling hopeless to all of a sudden feeling empowered, not only for their own lives, but empowered to say I can be a part of the community and I can be a part of this type of change that President Obama is trying to create as well.
Wow, we read in the paper so much that I think Minnesota has got the highest disparity in terms of race and economic, everything from housing to the scores with kids in school, et cetera. Is there any way that this effort can be tied into that? I mean, it sounds like it is with these two initiatives,
Yes.
but we hear particularly a lot with the Minneapolis School District. Is there anything that's going on there, Artika, that you're aware of?
Well, I know there's been wonderful initiatives also through their Office of equity and diversity, and focusing on bringing mentors into the schools in Minneapolis public schools. So that's their programs like the 100 Strong Who Care. And there's been some very explicit focus also on mentoring and tutoring services for African American boys. So I have seen some changes in both school districts, but if I looked at it a bit larger in the scope of what President Obama was referring to, I want to highlight just a little data for you all. I brought just some information for us to think about, because I think oftentimes our analysis ends with Minnesota's so nice. But once we
Yes.
look at these disparities, we can say that
Or not.
systemically, Minnesota's not so nice, because there's some hidden secrets that we have related to the disparities. So my brother's keeper will focus on a few key indicators related to success. The first one is education. So President Obama stated very early on that we need to make sure that we're making an investment in high quality early childhood education. And what stood out to me in looking at the data that he shared was that there's a gap. If you look at children living in poverty versus children in other socioeconomic classes that are higher, middle class families, there's a 30 million word gap in their vocabulary. And at first I had to look again, put my glasses back on. I said, do you mean 3 million? No, 30 million. So as we look at that, we can see that the disparities start very early on when we think about education. So that should give us hope to think about. We know that there are practical things that can work. So investing in early childhood education. And the one thing that I'd like to say before I go into more statistics about Minnesota, as I was reading this and just pondering about it and thinking about my own role, I think we've almost become immune to the sense of we read this data and we say, oh,
Yes.
a black boy has
Yep.
a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison during his lifetime. And we've come to a point, and I think President Obama has stated it as well, that we've accepted that as our reality. But I would distinguish it, that these are facts, but our reality is something that you and I each must create. And that's a reality to say that these types of statistics are not acceptable. So let's start with the first one. 4th grade reading scores by race. This is the state of Minnesota. So by the time that African American boys hit 4th grade, 79% of them are reading below reading proficiency levels. So that shows us that one of the key things that my brother's keeper is focusing on is reading and literacy, that we have to invest our time and resources in that way. The second one that was also startling to me, because I have a nephew that would fit directly into these ages, but African American youth ages 10 to 24 have the highest homicide rate in the state of Minnesota, at 69 deaths per 100,000, compared to white youth where it's 39 per 100,000.
Wow. That's almost double.
It's almost double. And it also mirrors the national statistics. And then once again, when we go into the juvenile justice statistics, we see some disparities there again. And it's in Minnesota, black youth represent 7% of the population, and 40% of youth detain in the juvenile detention facilities, while white youth represent 82% of the population, and only 38% of those detain. And that takes me back again to the work of Sergeant Carter and Save Our Sons. Through the work that we've been able to do under his leadership of helping to support the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, is really to work on these issues related to juvenile incarceration, to ensure that it's a last resort that young people are placed in corrections.
Is Sergeant Carter with the police department or the sheriff's department, or?
He was formerly with the police department, so he's a
Okay.
retired sergeant as
Gotcha,
well.
okay.
You know, I hear often, because we have an African-American president, that everybody has equal chance and equal opportunity to everything. I mean, why are we still talking about this stuff? Because after all, you know, there's an African-American person in the White House. How are we to keep this information, not just in front of the Black community, but in front of all of our communities, that this is still real information that's impacting not just the African-American kids, but these are our children as Minnesotans, as Americans? How do we keep this information at top of mind in front of people?
Yeah, because it's a lot deeper, a lot more complicated issue than, oh, now we have a black president and therefore everything's all okay.
But you hear that
You
quite
do
often.
hear it. You do
Quite
hear it.
often.
People aren't thinking critically when they make comments like that.
And how do we encourage involvement, or how do we get this information so that individuals that really don't know what to do, but they want to have a role, they want to make it better, how do we educate them or even provide these opportunities? Is there a one-stop shop, or do they kind of have to just go out on their own to figure out, how do I make an impact for 10 to 14-year-old African-American boys?
That's an excellent point, because I think oftentimes we can have the excuse of, I don't know what to do. So
Yes.
that leads us to inaction.
Yeah.
So the White House has actually made it quite easy for us There is a My Brother's Keeper Initiative webpage. There you can find all the information related to President Obama's initial speech in launching the campaign. You also can find resources like the fact sheets that I provided. I had Minnesota-specific information, but you can have some of the national data there. And coupled with that, there's also a task force that's working specifically on this initiative. They launched a report on Friday, this past Friday, and it gave some tips on ways people can get involved. The key areas that they focused on were tutoring and mentoring, because that way, one, you're addressing those educational gaps that I talked about initially through tutoring, but mentoring, I think that's one of the pieces that President Obama talked about primarily. He drew upon his own experience from growing up in a single household with a single mother to think about what led to his success. He admitted making bad choices, but he also talked about time and time again the circle of concern, the circle of support. And in many ways, that's that old adage of a village. It takes a village to raise a child. And if the village is fragmented, what will we do? So I would think, just even if you don't go to the webpage and look at the initiative, the simplest thing is looking at the young people who are in front of you. Because it's easy to say, well, that's not my child, that's not my problem. But really, if we looked at it in a different way, an assets-based approach, to say each individual has potential to give, can we unveil it? If we miss out, let's say I just start with you two, and I miss out on the potential of you two on this other end, what does that mean for our society?
That's right.
What if you were to create a cure for cancer? I mean, what if you had this new technology that you needed to create, or this idea? I believe we all are manifested in this way of having a call and a purpose and gifts and talents. So I think the larger scope of it is not a black or white issue. We definitely have to deal with some of the issues related to systemic racism in America and deal with those inequities. But I also think we have to change our frame of reference and say, how can we unveil the assets of each individual?
Channel 5 the other night, and I rarely watch the news anymore because it's always so depressing, but one of the things they were discussing was the fact that the whole Twin City area, maybe it might have been throughout Minnesota, I'm not sure, did not have enough tutors. And if you went on their website, there was a link that any of us could hook up to do tutoring, and they were paying tutors as much as up to almost $1,000 a month to tutor young children. It looked like a good share of it was reading. So I'll pass that on to our viewers here, as well as those of us here in this group.
And there are initiatives in other cities also. It's not just Minnesota. It's in Illinois and Chicago, and I don't know how many other states, but there are initiatives across the country. Is that right?
This is true, yes.
I think it's one of those things where each of us, regardless of the stage of our life, regardless of the children in our lives, we have to take ownership for our community. However you look at it, but it's going to your local community organization, going to your local faith community, going to your local, church, whatever it is, and figuring out how can I get plugged in. Maybe all I have is 2 hours a week, but that 2 hours a week can make that huge impact, whether it's tutoring, whether it's mentoring, but that's starting somewhere. Because a lot of times when you do hear the statistics, it can sound overwhelming, but all it takes is just one of us to make a commitment of that 2 hours. Or if we really, really don't have the time, then that financial supporting organizations that are doing the work can go far in making sure that other people can then come in and assist or help to create that hope that kids long for. Because there's not a child that is born with the desire to fail. That's born with the desire to, you know what, I think I want to be an offender when I grow up. No child has that.
Agreed.
And thank you, Dr. Tyner, for joining us today and educating us on this timely topic. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. Coming up next, we'll be talking about girls and Uganda. Welcome back to our show. I'm so thrilled to introduce our two guests today. We have Betty Lidke, founder of Find Your Buried Treasure, joining us today. Hi, Betty. Thank you. Hi. And then we also have Tabitha Chambade. She is the founder of African Missions Outreach. Thank you for joining us, Tabitha.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Tabitha and Betty are going to talk a little bit about young girls trapped in poverty and prostitution in Uganda. So if you could start, Betty, tell us a little bit about the project.
Okay, the way it got started was we were already planning a trip to Uganda for some leadership conferences that Tabitha had arranged. And while we were getting ready for that trip, She read an article in a Uganda newspaper about this place near Kampala, the capital of Uganda, where it's a small village, more of a slum, and many of the people living there were young girls who were working as prostitutes and selling themselves for the equivalent of 30 or 40 cents, because that's the only way that they could survive and feed their own children.
Could you say what you mean by young girls? What was the age?
Some of them were teenagers, many of them in their 20s.
Okay.
And Tabitha sent me a copy of the newspaper article by email and added the note that when we go to Uganda, you and I need to go visit this place. And we did, and we spent several hours there visiting the girls and talking with them. And when we left, our hearts just broke. They could have been our daughters. They were just such amazing girls in such desperate situation. And as we left, we said, we've got to do something to get them out of there. We didn't know what, we didn't know how, but we knew that we had to do that, and that's how our dream and our mission got born.
Wow. And so Tabitha, is that how you started the African Missions Outreach, or how did African Missions Outreach get involved with this initiative or this project?
Well, the reason why I had started African Missions Outreach was to try to reach the unreached, educate them, and give them some of the privileges that they don't get. But along the way, when I met these girls, they fitted very well in that group, and I decided, I think, that I should concentrate with the girls rather than any other person.
And so you were already preparing a trip to Uganda for leadership opportunities. Tell us a little about how you selected Uganda. How were you connected with the country to start with before you even met the girls?
That's easy. Tabitha grew up in Uganda, and she lives here now, but all of her family is still there. And we met and just got to know each other, just got to be really good friends really quickly, and started planning some amazing things. Actually, the plans started happening and kind of visited themselves on us. We had no idea what we were going to be getting into.
Isn't that usually how great things are born? You just sort of
Absolutely.
step
Yeah.
out there, and next thing you know, you're saving hundreds of people or making impact on so many lives.
Hope so.
That's amazing. So tell us exactly what you're doing with this project. Tell us what you're doing with these girls. Tell us how you're selecting the girls. I want to know more about what you're doing over there, because it sounds like great work.
Yeah, we started by building relationships with these girls so that they could get comfortable and be able to tell us their stories, because they have been let down so many times and they just don't trust anybody. So for the past 2 years, we have just been building the relationships which we have now. Then our next step is to build a miracle village. And our miracle village, we are calling it a miracle village because it's a miracle to leave Kimombasa, that particular village, where they are, into a different life. And the miracle village will have a business for them to work in, which is not prostitution, and it will have a school for their kids to go, a rehabilitation center to rehabilitate the kids and the parents emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so many other things as we progress, as funds will allow us to do that.
So when you said Miracle Village, is it a different place you're getting them moved to, or is it inside the same village?
No, not at all. It's a different place, and they don't even want to live in that same place because of the memories that they have in that particular place.
It's nice that you're getting them out of there to a
Yes.
different location where
Yes.
they can really
That's
feel
very
like
good.
they're taking that first step to get away from that life. Am I right?
Yes, sure.
And that was their choice. That's not something that we decided we're going to do. We talked with them on, well, first of all, did they want to
Yes,
leave, or were
this-
they
yes,
happy doing what they're doing, or were they there of choice? And of course, they really weren't, and they wanted to be out of there and as far away from there as they could be. So one of the things that we've done at the different trips that we've been in Uganda is look at different areas and different pieces of land and things that are available. Because this really did start out, we just said, we've got to do this, and maybe we can do this, and maybe we can do this. And all of a sudden, it's this miracle village of hope and healing, because they have so many needs, physical and emotional, and then practical as well. We can't just take them out and put them
Yes.
someplace else and say, okay,
I
here's where
know,
you can
that's
live,
true.
have a great time, you know, life's gonna be done. So much needs to be done, but we're working with them and asking them what they would want and what their needs are. And they are so humble in what they're asking for and what they hope for. And most of the time, what they say has more to do with their children than with them. They want to take care of their children and get them educated and out of that life that they're living in.
How many girls are involved in this, Tabitha?
We have more than 75 girls.
75, okay.
Wow.
And are their parents there with them?
You
then?
know, Kimombasa is a small town, and this has been like a generational thing. So you find that the grandmother was a prostitute, the mother was a prostitute, and then the daughter is a prostitute, and now their kids are also looking to the same career. So we are trying to break a generation
Sure.
process that has been going on. So we want it to stop with these girls that we are rescuing and start a new generation.
So do you provide any kind of education to them to make their living, or what kind of support do you give?
Now, when you say education, are you talking about general education or skills
because-
training?
Yes, when they move to a new place, they need something to, to do their living, right? So what are the things that you provide first?
Well, we're going to be providing education, schools for that, but also skills training and different opportunities that they have to earn money. Now, Uganda is one of the poorest countries in the world, but it is so rich in fertile land, and they have a much longer growing season than we do here in Minnesota. And so there are a number of opportunities of things that the girls can do and that can be started without a great deal of time or resources, because we don't have a lot of time or resources in getting started. And it breaks our heart every time we're there that we can't get them out right now. It was October of 2011 was our first trip there, and there are so many things that we've done and so many things that have happened and so many angels and miracles that have come into our lives. But yet, we haven't been able to physically get any of the girls out of there yet, and we're actually hoping that that's going to be happening before the end of this year with our next trip there. But there's still so many things that need to happen.
I have a question now. I'm half Ugandan. My mother's from Uganda, and I'm very familiar with part of my culture. So how is it coming back into the culture, like being shamed? Are people feeling shamed?
Yeah.
You know,
Good question.
being once prostitutes, and how, you know what I mean? Okay.
Yes,
That's my
yes, and
question.
we've talked about that a lot, because if there's one word that means the most to the both of us, it's respect. And we are so protective of those girls. Even the word prostitute sticks in our throat, because there are girls. And that's how we see them, and that's how we know them. But the reality is of what they've been doing, and that's the only life they know, and that's how other people are going to be looking on them to a degree as well. So building in them self-respect and dignity, and I can't even say restoring respect and dignity, because many of them have never known it.
Exactly.
And no one should have to live like that.
Exactly.
One of the questions I have, it's the nurse in me, I guess, is my concern would be about the sexually transmitted diseases and HIV. How extensive is that? Are the girls and the perpetrators of the abuse using condoms? What's involved with that? Are the girls able to get checked at all for any of these sexually transmitted diseases and get treated? I'm sure they must be rampant.
Yeah, it is, that is a difficult place to explain, because the girls are trying to make money, and the men don't want to use the condoms or any other way to protect themselves from getting diseases. So it's a choice they make. You either go hungry or you take the risk. So most of the time they do take the risk, and so many of them are sick, and some of them are not sick, but those with treatable diseases sometimes do not have access to the health care that they need, and it just eventually becomes chronic. But the government is also doing a good job of creating awareness of all those different diseases, and there are some volunteer organizations that are trying to give them the basic attention they need for certain diseases. Yeah.
I'm just surprised as to why don't they have any other source of earnings? Don't they have any other thing other than prostitution? I'm still not able to get that. There should be some other way too, to,
Yeah, Uganda is a very poor country, and a lot of them, I should say 99% of them are illiterate. They have never been to school.
Okay.
They don't even know anything, and that is where they are. That is what they know. That is what they have grown up seeing. So,
You know,
Another- go ahead.
I was going to say, we so appreciate you, Tabitha, and you, Betty, for joining us today and sharing so much about the groundbreaking work that you're doing with the 75 girls. As we wrap up, Tabitha, could you share with us, if people want more information on the African Missions Outreach, could you share your website or how they can get in touch with you and your organization?
yeah, our website is www.amooUSA.org, and you can email us. We have an email address there. We have a way to contact us anytime. We always respond to all people who have questions.
Okay, that is so, and can you just repeat that? Was AMO,
OOUSA.org.
and what does it stand for something?
It stands for African Missions Outreach Organization USA.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much do you think you have accomplished so far, and where do you want to get from here?
Well, we've accomplished not nearly as much as we want to and need to, but even from the first time that Tabitha went back after our first time there, she was upset because she didn't have anything to take, any solid things. But she came back and said, Betty, you will not believe how much of a difference there is in the girls because we've given them hope. And they know that we're not going to let them down and we're not going to leave them. So
When's your next
That's
trip?
right.
Yeah,
given-
I was going to ask that.
August,
Who can volunteer? How can you be a part of it?
we can talk as soon as the show is over.
Well, thank you again. I so appreciate it. Thank you for giving hope to those girls that have known only pain in their community. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to educate us and our viewers on your topic. And thank you for watching us today. Join us next time on It's a Woman's World.